presentation. I suspect there's a speaker buddy coming in to do a formal introduction, but Lauren, you know what a valued asset you are to the agency, and we're delighted to have your insights and wisdom to be shared with us today.
Thanks, Amanda. I can wait for my speaker buddy to read my formal intro. Hey, Jessica.
Hi. I am here to introduce Lauren Kunkel, who's going to go over different aspects of CAMS, which I know everyone's super excited about. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to put those into the comment box or raise your hand, and Lauren will get back to you. Ooh, there's a question already. And Lauren will be able to answer those, or a program manager might chime in.
All right. I'm Lauren. I used to work in the program Program Administration and Assistance Office. I was a community development specialist, and about 2 years ago transitioned into this role where I work now for all the programs at the agency, managing CAMS, making updates. So that's what I'm going to be rolling through today. We're going to look through the user guide because I've made some updates to that. That was the big reveal for this session last year, was the new user guide. So I've got a few changes to that, a couple system changes that we'll go through in that first portion, and then we'll go through some just review of common functions in CAMS. So budget revisions, submitting remittances, what happens when you can't do that, what might be the reason, and also spending some time on the staff primary roles and project roles, and depending on what you're assigned, how that impacts what the functions are available to you in CAMS. So I'm going to start sharing, and we'll look through first the changes to the user guide. Some of them are functions that were there before and they're just outlined now. And then we've got a bit of a change with compliance for audits and reports. So we'll spend some time on that as well. So I've got pulled up on the right side of my screen. I've pulled out a few pages of the user guide just to go through the changes first, and then we'll scroll through and actually use the user guide as we're looking over those CAMS functions. So budget revisions, remittances, reports. On my left side, I have a screen pulled up of test CAMS portal. So this is where I go in and make sure that all the changes that we make work and look appropriate. So some of the things that may not look right are the reports that we have assigned to projects, the names of things, the dates. That's okay. This is test CAMS just to help us get a feel for it as we're looking at these side by side. So the first change to the user guide, I've got a few things that got added to the FAQ. The first are the file size limits and character limits. So the first one here is a maximum file size. And this error message here, some of you might be familiar with it, the server response error, maximum request length exceeded. It means that your file is too big. I've got the limits now listed in the user guide. So if you're uploading a file for a report attachment, supporting documentation for remittance, any document upload within CAMS, that maximum is 100 megabytes. If you are attaching something to an application, it is slightly larger at 500. But in either of those places, if you're uploading something that is too large, you will get this error message. You have options. You can reduce the PDF file size within Adobe if you have a license that allows you to do that. I have a link here that gives the tutorial on changing the file size. If you don't have a license, Adobe also has a free compressing tool that you can use online. You drop your file in, it squeezes it down, and then allows you to download the compressed version. So I have a link to that here as well. So that's your first option is compressing that file. If it is not a PDF, you can send it to a zip file, and sometimes that will shrink the file enough for you to be able to upload it. A zip file is a valid file format for all attachment areas within CAMS. So anytime that you want to try to zip a file to make it smaller, you'll be able to attach that zip file. That also works if you need to upload multiple pictures to something. I'm thinking about like an IPR report. If you have multiple documents that need to fall into one slot, you can also zip those together if you've only got one attachment slot available. And then your last option, if it is still too big, is to try and pare down that file. If you can remove unnecessary pages or images, sometimes those can make it a lot larger, especially if it's a scanned paper document versus a PDF created from like a Word document. Those can get pretty big. And we do have it feels like an infinite amount of space to just throw documents in CAMS, but it is limited. So we've got those file limits to try to keep a handle on that. And so if you do ever receive that error message, you're not able to upload something, there are some options there to go through and troubleshoot. The other limit that I've got listed in the FAQ now are character limits. There's a difference between a character limit and a word limit. And so if you're working in Word and you're just looking at your word count and you're copying and pasting into an application, it might get cut off because 6,000 characters and 6,000 words are very different. So most of the warning messages that come up that show you've exceeded the limit will say characters, but if you're thinking words, think characters. So spaces, letters, periods. And then I've got those limits listed here. So for a long text field, if you've got a report that you're filling out, that's going to be the larger rectangle. For narrative, you've got 2,000 characters there. For a short text field, that's maybe like a word or two, 25 characters. I know the one that the message comes up all the time for about the 6,000 character limit is for applications. So each of the narrative boxes on the narrative information tab for an application can have 6,000 characters. And this last one here, I discovered recently, I didn't know that we had a limit for these and that we would have such long file names, but we had some file errors, uploaded files that weren't opening because the characters within the name of the file itself exceeded the limit. So we've increased that to 150. And this is when you are saving a file and adding the name to it to upload. You cannot type in more than 150 characters in that file name box. It'll get cut off and we won't be able to put the time and date stamp on it in CAMS, and it won't open for your program administrator. So 150 characters is a lot of room to put a file name in there. But keeping in mind that you do have that limit there, and if you exceed it, we won't be able to open the file. We can go in and get it, but just something to keep in mind. The next FAQ that I added was at staff request about how to find a contract that's been uploaded, and we'll touch on this a little bit when we work through the completing a report function. It's not going to show up here on your reporting schedule because it has been uploaded as a report that doesn't have a date. So you'll have to go into your the project management page, and it'll be under the reports and documents tab here. I think that this question came from a separate division, but I just wanted to let y'all know that if a contract has been uploaded and you want to go and find it, you want to come to your reports and documents tab for that particular project and not look here from the project list and reporting schedule view. I have, make sure we've got, okay, keeping tabs on my chat over here. The next thing that we've added is not new, but just to let folks know where to find it, is payment routing. That's going to be an option on the project information tab for that project. So if you have multiple accounts associated with your DOA account or multiple routing options, those will all show up here. So if you need to select a different one for a particular project for where that payment should go, that's going to happen on the project information tab for that particular project. And you'll have additional radio buttons and you can select them here. We've got one last update, and that is for other line items in budgets. We also realized that if special characters get used in this, the text box where you're adding the title for that other line item, you've got colons or hyphens, slashes. It can cause some duplication in those line items on the remittances in the back end. And it can throw off how your funding totals look on the budget tab. So we've now made a limitation. So you cannot, if you try to type in a colon or a hyphen, it just won't show up in that box. That's going to be true here for when you're making a budget revision or when you're completing your budget for an application. One thing we've realized is if a budget is revised and it had special characters in that field before we put this restriction in place, it can make some of your totals look funny on the budget tab. Everything is accounted for properly. If you were to go into a remittance and look at a remittance, the totals there, everything is fine. You can see what's been paid out, but it might look a little weird on what you have available on the budget tab. If you notice something like that, let your program administrator know, and they'll get in contact with me, and I work with our developer, and we fix that up. And it's not a big deal. We've done a few of them now, so we've got a little bit of a system down. So it's nothing to be worried about. Moving forward, this won't be an issue. It's just for some of those older projects that might have some of those special characters still within that the title for the other line items. And so moving forward, you won't be able to add them in, just alphabet letters. All right, that is the end of my so sort of the easy options for rolling through these changes. Next is a little bit more involved. So that is our compliance. So for audits and financial statements and our reports. Looking here for audits, we've got a few new audit statuses and some flags that show up in Portal. So one of the new audit statuses is under review. Previously, if an audit was uploaded, it would be in pending review status and it could be deleted while our staff were looking at that audit and maybe hadn't completed their review. So now we will have pending review, under review, not accepted, and accepted. I'm going to pull up my audits page over here so we can take a look at that. We've also got some information up top that explains the difference between audits and financial statements. So let me get back on track here, sorry. So we can see here if we've got an audit or financial statement that's been uploaded and the status is pending review. Our staff have not opened that up yet. You can delete that particular entry. If it's under review, we've opened it, we've started our review, you're not going to be able to remove that file here. Nothing has changed for the accepted and not accepted audits. They will stay just as they are. We do have a new column for expiration date, and that is tied to this flag that you'll see up at the top. Previously, you weren't able to see the expiration date for an audit, and now you can. The flag up top here will appear if none of your audits or if all of your audits are expired. So none of them have a current date or an expiration date that's in the future. That means you need to upload a new audit or financial statement. If you're on any page in CAMS, you'll have this flag at the top if that's something that is required for your organization, and it will link right here to the audits page. We can upload an audit. So So I'll do this with a sample file so we can see that the flag will go away. The next thing that's changed here is the audit reporting period. So you're now able to have more than one audit pending at a time. It's not one that's uploaded and you have to wait for it to be reviewed until you can upload another one. The stipulation is you can't have your audit reporting periods overlapping. So you'll get an error message if more than one of them has a reporting period that overlaps, because we want to keep them for really distinct audit periods. So let me look up here and make sure I'm not overlapping anything. So this one ends 12/22. These are just going to be pretend dates. And this, I've added some text here also. This used to just say this, does this apply to your organization or not? This is really for if you're getting more than $750,000 in federal awards, your organization has to also upload your single audit to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse. This question here is just saying, did you do it if you're required to, or did you not? That's part of our audit checklist. So it's not going to be applicable for me today. So I'm going to check that and upload my audit. And my audit flag went away. So now we're all back in compliance. It didn't go away immediately. Sometimes you have to give it a refresh to make sure that it goes away. Let me make sure we don't have any other notes here. I know I've gotten some emails in the help desk about that flag, and that's what that means. You've got to get either a financial statement or an audit uploaded. And if you're not sure what applies to your organization, I've got our DHCD policy linked here at the top. And that's all that. So this this second section here on the audits page in CAMS and the user guide is new, but I think we've gone through everything there. It's just that you can have more than one that's pending or under review. You want to make sure that those reporting periods don't overlap and that you've got something with a current expiration date to keep that flag off the top there. If you do see that flag, it will impact what our staff is able to do. So remittances will not be processed. I think that is the main catch for compliance for audits. But it could impact closeout as well. That might be a program specific implication. The second portion of compliance is with our projects and, our reports and documents. So if we're here looking at our project list, this is the main page that shows up when you log into CAMS. I can see not from this page directly. I can see just my projects. I don't see any indication of if they're out of compliance or not, but I can see on this reporting schedule that I've got an overdue report. If I go to that project, so this is my ARS project, I click the detail button to see that project management page, I'll see that compliance flag at the top of each of the tabs just for that project. The audit compliance impacts the organization as a whole and all of the projects for that organization. An overdue report is only going to impact that specific project. So this is also linked here. And I can see that I've got this incomplete status report and it's overdue. So I'm going to, I've already attached it. This one just had a single attachment upload. I will submit that report. And now when I come back to my management page, my flag is gone, my project is back in compliance, and I can also get my remittances approved for this project now as well. And I've added those screenshots to the user guide here. So this bottom portion explaining. I'm going to make my toolbar go away. This bottom portion here for report compliance showing that if you've got one or overdue reports, it's going to be out of compliance, and you'll see that flag at the top there. Elizabeth, yes, if an audit is not accepted, an email is sent with the comments from the fiscal staff who performed the review, and it will let them know what the issue was. It will not allow them to revise that audit entry. It will stay as not accepted, and the audit file is removed. They will upload a new audit. Let me try and get the zoom here. Check my chats. All right. So those are the changes to the user guide and the changes to CAMS for compliance. And the other ones were small, just like the alpha characters in the other file names. I think those were the only changes. Everything else was just an addition, getting some extra info in there. I want to next move through some of those common functions. So we'll look at organization level, so managing staff, project roles, the organization information, and then we've, yes, Jessica. Do I have to do something?
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. If an audit is not accepted, will the grantee get a reason why?
Yes, when the financial or the fiscal staff reviews it, they have to input comments when an audit is not accepted, and those comments are emailed to the financial analyst. If someone has a financial analyst role, this is a good segue. So this user would get that notification, and then anyone who has organization head or profile manager roles on the staff list here would get that notification. Are there any other questions in the, yes, Ellen?
And correct me if I maybe misheard you, but from what I understood, like CERCAP has multiple different programs that we input into CAMS. So is there a way to separate like the remittance funds? Like when the money comes into CERCAP, it's all dumped into one account. Is there a way that we could set up different like bank accounts for that to be deposited into, or no?
That would be with DOA.
Okay.
So Ellen, when you send the paperwork to DOA, you have to give them variations on the account numbers. And I've seen some people who have as many as a dozen account numbers listed, and when you go in to do your remittance, you just tell them which one you want it to go into.
Because we just handle that internally, deal with finance and transfer money. But if there's a way that we could do that on the other end and it just go into the correct account, I think I was just brainstorming on my end.
No, you should be able to call up DOA and make it work.
Okay, and who is that? Or what is that?
The Virginia Department of Accounts. They're the ones who actually deposit the funds into your account.
Okay. And
Hey, Alan,
the rest of my team's on here too, so it might be a community effort to try to get that done for future projects.
Yeah, Alan, this is Cherry. I was going to say you also need to talk to Kim about that.
Right, because she had, I think, mentioned that, like, we'll get, like, payroll money from,
It's all just in one pot.
People, we get remittances to pay contractors, we get all these funds coming in from the same vendor, but for multiple different things. So I think that would make things easier on our finance department as well if we could meet with them to get that straightened out. So, which I didn't know that was a possibility. So, thank
Yeah,
you.
if you've got those accounts set up with them, they will, because CAMS interfaces with our financial management system, whatever additional accounts you have, those will all show up here, the suffix for them, and you'll be able to route the payments that come from the remittances for this particular project into those accounts.
Okay, good to know.
So because this is our test environment, I've just got the one, but if we had additional options here, they'd just be separate radio
Because we
buttons.
want to keep like IPR funds separate than our ARS funds. So then if we have separate accounts internally, we can send that to DOA and they would deposit that money directly to the specific account that we have.
Yes, it would be setting up those accounts with DOA, and then you'll be able to select them here once they're set up.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Learn something new.
All right. Was there any other questions before we start looking at? We're going to start with staff roles. All right, let's go do some roles. So got this handy little drop down here in the user guide. We're now in the full user guide. No longer need my additions. I'm gonna first, I struggled between going down the drop down menu in order or starting with staff so that we've got the background of what staff roles can do on each of these pages. So I figured we'll start with staff roles because that's where a lot of the help desk questions come from. I can't do something or it's not allowing me to submit this. A lot of the time it comes down to your role doesn't give you that permission. So I wanted to spend some time looking over that because I didn't have a ton of time last grant management workshop to really dive into this table that I've created. So we will start looking at the managed staff page. So this information needs to be kept up to date as much as possible. If your organization head or your profile manager leave your organization, you don't have anybody who can come in and update this information or add people, make revisions. So I can do that for you, and we're here to help if that happens. But being proactive and staying on top of this list and making sure contact information and emails are all current is a really great first step. Also making sure that you've got 2 profile managers and an organization head helps to make sure you've got 3 people who can go in and make those changes if there's some kind of turnover or vacation or something like that. Because those are the only 3 roles that are able to make changes to this page. The organization head, the profile manager, there's also a profile manager organization head role. So if someone has both of those as one user, they're able to make changes here as well. So I first want to run through just adding, editing, and removing staff on this page, and then we'll look at the roles permissions for each of those. So if I want to add somebody new and give them access to our organization's CAMS profile, I will come to the manage dropdown. We'll come to the staff page, which is where we are here. I'll enter their information and then choose their role here. They'll get an email letting them know that they've been added and that they need to log in, change their password for the initial login, and then they'll be able to come in here and depending on the role that you assign them, operate in CAMS, depending on the role that you assign them. If we want to edit any users' roles, if we need to change email, title, phone here, we can do that. They also have the ability to do that on their own on the user profile page. So I can change my information here. I cannot change my own role. Only the users that have the organization head or profile manager role are able to do that here from the staff page. But I can edit that information if I need to. So if I want to change this person to a consultant, I will change that, click update, and now their primary role has been changed here in CAMS. And I'm trying to keep this side by side because I've listed out as much as possible these steps detailed over here in the user guide. If I jump over something, they're all listed out here. And then if we want to remove someone, so revoking access, if someone leaves the organization, it's also important to keep that up to date in here so we don't have extra staff, so they can't continue to access it once they leave our organization. We can come over here and remove, and it will confirm that we want to remove them from the organization, and they will no longer be able to log in. They won't have access to any projects. If they do come back to the organization, they'll need to be re-added by the organization head or a profile manager. So looking at this page, when we're adding somebody new, we have to choose their primary role. In CAMS, there are primary roles, which are assigned here at the managed staff page. So this is our staff list. And there are project roles, which we have separately from this managed drop down below staff. The two are connected, but can override each other in certain situations. So I wanted to spend some time with this table and run through a few different scenarios. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out the best way to present this information. This is what made the most sense to me, but if there are suggestions out there about how this could be more clear, I'm totally open to it. So here, when we're looking at the managed staff page, this is your primary role. This gives the user access to or determines their access to everything in CAMS. This is if they're able to edit information on the organization page, if they can upload audits, if they're able to submit a remittance. So if we're looking over here, we can see the roles listed across the top. So profile manager, organization head, and profile manager, organization head all have the same access, which is everything. They've got full access down the board. They can change the organization information, manage the staff list. They can change project roles, upload audits. They can start applications and submit them. And then within projects, they can change information on the project information tab. They can submit budget revisions. They can submit remittances, complete reports. They get it all. The project manager has almost as much access as the profile manager and organization head. The only things that the project manager is not able to do are editing the organization information. So this information here, they are not able to add or edit staff on this page, and they cannot upload audits. That's only for the organization head, profile manager, financial analyst. If we're looking over here, so continuing across the top of this table, I'm trying to zoom it in also. I guess it doesn't want me to zoom in anymore. The next role across the top is the project administrator, and they've got a little bit more limited permissions. So they can only view the majority of the pages here on this drop down. So they can edit their profile information, but they can only view the organization information, the staff list, the project roles, the audits, the documents. They cannot change any information there. They are able to start applications and submit them. Looking at the financial analyst role, so these are all still within this drop down here. They've got access to the finance pages, so they'll be able to upload audits and also the managed documents page. So that's where the W-9 is uploaded so that our finance staff is able to access that. And that's here from the drop down. I've just got a random file in here, but anything that applies to the whole organization. So W-9, if you've got like org charts, I'm trying to see mission statement, business license. I mean, some of those aren't totally necessary, but anything that feels appropriate to have applying to the whole organization, mainly your W-9, will go here under the managed documents, and the financial analyst has access to that. Our last two roles are consultant and organization review. The consultant is not able to make any changes to these pages here, similar to the project manager, the project administrator. The difference is they are able to start an application, but they cannot submit it. So that's what this partial access is that I have in this table. And that the same goes for down here within a project. And I'll get down to this second half of the table in a second. So consultant has limited access as a primary role. Organization review is what it sounds like. As a primary role, organization review only allows you to view things. You cannot make any changes to any pages. And this is where those project roles come in. So for profile manager, organization head, and project manager, a project role is not necessary, because when you assign a project role, it will override what the primary role permissions are. So if you're a project manager as your primary role here on the managed staff page, you're able to, you can continue down this column. For all projects in CAMS, you have full access. You can change the project information, submit budget revisions, remittances. You don't need a project role assigned. You already have that permission because your primary role is project manager. If you have that primary role of project manager, and then you were assigned a project role of project administrator, your permissions would be limited. You would not be able to submit budget revisions or remittances for that project that you have that project role assigned. So the project role will override the primary role permissions for that particular project. Similarly, if you're a project manager, it's not necessary to assign also a project manager project role, because your permissions would be the same for all projects. Looking across the outside of the first two columns, the project administrator, consultant, and organization review in particular are where those project roles can help. If you need to limit a user's access to all projects and the rest of the organization functions like applications, project roles, documents, audits, you can give an administrator, consultant, or org review role for their primary role, and then use that project role to grant additional access. So if someone had a consultant or org review role for their primary role, we'll stick with org review, I can only view the majority of pages in CAMS. But if I was then granted a particular project role for a project as a project manager, I'd be able to do everything on that project, but that project only. So I'd be able to submit budget revisions, remittances, reports and documents. But if I went to any other project, I would only be able to view them. So the difference here for a project role is really when we're looking at these last four roles that have limited access. If we want to grant someone additional permissions on a project, but we want to limit their permissions on all other projects. So if we are looking at our project roles, see if I've got some assigned. So I do have some assigned here. I guess I just deleted that person. We don't see their primary role. Okay, so in this table here on the project roles page, we can see what somebody's primary role is in CAMS. So that's their overall organizational access, and then their project role. So for this first user, they've got a consultant primary role, but for this particular project, they have a project manager role. So I've given them additional access here. Again, we've got this project manager. This one is not necessary. That's going to give them the same amount of access no matter what. If we wanted to edit the project roles here, you have to delete before you can edit if you needed to revise. And we can also add users from this page. So I will select someone else to add. We'll do another project manager. And then we'll see all of the users that have a particular project role for my test project. Test optional attachment title is the name of that project. And then I can delete as well. But again, this is really only for users who have a consultant, org review, or project administrator role where you need to grant them additional access to a particular project, and you get to choose that project from this list here. So that's the end of my table, my explanation of how roles can be expanded on with a project role or limited with a project role. Did I lose anybody in explaining that, or are there questions? All right, I don't see any hands. So, yes, Joanne.
I'm almost afraid to show my ignorance here. Okay, can we use a practical example like a consultant who's just an architect?
Yes.
So they would have view only on everything because they don't get to submit everything.
So I have a question first, though. I thought our program required that a consultant could only be assigned the consultant role because our contract is with a grantee. Have we now changed that programmatic agreement requirement? Amanda?
Like that's program specific. CAMS will let you assign it. CAMS doesn't know if someone.
That's right. CAMS will let you do anything. So this is not a CAMS thing. This is a programmatic thing. And the last I heard, our program said we don't want a consultant to be anything but a consultant because our contract is with the grantee, not with the consultant.
So I will respond to that, but it's going to be an equivocated response. That in general, that is accurate. If a grantee has a compelling reason for a consultant to fill a greater role, we will listen to that.
Thank you, Amanda.
Sure.
Hey, this is Kenny from CERCAP. So I'm thinking, isn't the consultant for a small town going to be the one entering most of this information into the portal? So wouldn't they have that access to do that?
They could enter it and save it, but the submit button has to be done by somebody who is an employee of the local, the grantee.
Right.
That's how we've done it in the past. So okay. they could prepare it, they could upload it and save it, but then somebody like the mayor or the town manager or the town clerk would have to actually submit it.
Right.
And that's this partial access versus full access. So if someone had a primary role of consultant, Joanne, going back to your question, like an architect, they would be able to start an application. They'd be able to start and save a budget revision, enter and save a remittance, and enter and save a report, but they could not submit that application, budget revision, remittance, or report. That would have to be done by someone who has full access to do that. So profile manager, org head, project manager, the project administrator can submit the reports, but they cannot submit the budget revisions or remittances. Sorry, Evie.
No, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
And so I'm not sure about the consultants have to be a consultant programmatic implication. one option, if this sounds doable, to give them access to a particular project to make submissions versus just entering and saving that information, would be to give them that primary role of consultant, which only allows them to view and then start an application. But if they, were then assigned a project role for that particular project that they are involved on, they'd then be able to submit that information. So submit the budget. Yes.
And our argument would be, Kenny, is that the reason we don't want a consultant, for example, be able to submit a budget revision or a contract amendment is that we have no way of telling that the grantee is aware of what's going on. And you don't want to inadvertently have a consultant commit the grantee to something they're not aware of, which could cause problems down the road, which is why Amanda said we'll do it on a case-by-case basis, but it's not our starting point, because we need to make sure that the grantee who signed the contract is aware of what's going on. And by requiring them to hit submit, that's our way of making sure they know what's happening in theory.
EB, you are exactly right. So for those of us who have a few more years on us than others, if you remember back in the Stone Age when we were engraving these pieces of correspondence on tablets or writing it on paper, we required not only a signature, but an original signature in blue ink for these things that made adjustments to a project. And so this is our way of kind of demanding blue ink, if you will, that it's essential that everybody acknowledge the primacy of the grantee over the primacy of the consultant. And for that reason, we need for that grantee to retain some responsibilities that simply can't be shared.
And thus my question, under consultant on the project tabs, we've got the consultant having full access to something, and that just kind of threw me off because I never thought a consultant would have full access to anything.
I hear what you're saying. That's this first tab here. So it's project contact, location, service area. That's something that we could change. We could change that to a view only. I can make a note of that, because I agree with you. And I saw that John had his hand raised. And I heard another hand raised.
Pertaining to your discussion around the consultant access, I believe the reason there's full access for project information is in case there's a change in the administration of the locality. We have to be able to report that information into CAMS so that DACD has updated information.
And that's why Lauren said you need to have more than one person assigned with those top two tiers, the organization head and the profile manager. That's why there should always be two people with one of those assignments. That way, if someone got ill or something, somebody still can go in and assign additional people with additional staff roles. But it's not the job of the consultant to do that. It's the grantee's responsibility.
Correct.
Well, can I ask a question? Because I have a situation with one of my grantees where the PDC is the project manager and does most all the work and needs access to, what is it? Do the budgets, remittances and whatnot.
Well, they have access as a consultant. They can do everything except hit the submit button. So they can go in and they can upload the budget.
Got it.
But if you were, for example, going to do a compliance review and you discovered the consultant is submitting things, that would be a finding.
Yes, I understand now. Thank you.
Sarah?
So you're saying if I have access to be able to submit something that was set up incorrectly as a consultant. I'm sorry. Yes.
And you
That's right.
and you would want to fix that before I came and did a compliance review.
Okay.
I'm just telling you, Sarah. Now that I know to look for it,
All right. I will.
we'll work
figure
on
that
it,
out
Sarah.
again. Okay,
We'll work
thank you.
on it. We'll get it done.
You know who I'm talking about, Elizabeth.
Yes, we'll work on it.
So let me ask my colleagues at DHCD to help me remember that perhaps this is something that we need to address more specifically in contract negotiation meetings. This is a really beneficial discussion. I really appreciate everybody being forthcoming about this information. And it brings me to a question, Lauren. So in the situation that John alluded to, let's say the county administrator has all of these assigned responsibilities and nobody else does. And heaven forbid, well, no, I'm not going to say that. Let's say the county administrator wins the lottery and disappears in 24 hours. Is there a way that we can help kind of from the back of the house handle this stuff if push comes to shove?
So, yes, in two ways. First, the consultant can enter and save with that partial access, but then it is not only the profile manager organization head role who has to hit submit. Anybody who has full access with that role can do that. So if we're looking at a budget revision, if the consultant enters it, someone with a primary role or project role of FA can submit, a project manager or a profile head, organization head. So we've got other people who can go in, not just that county administrator who might have a lot else going on. And if for some reason they leave and we need to make adjustments to that staff list and we don't have an additional profile manager or two to make those changes for us, you can send an email to the help desk and we have a separate application where I can go in and manually reassign someone to have that role to make those changes to the staff list.
So Lauren, about how long does it take to make that happen? And I'm asking this because I think of my small towns who may only have 2 people on staff. And if you don't have both of them assigned those 2 roles, they can't submit, for example, maybe a remittance request or anything until it gets resolved. So I'm wondering just like, how long does it take for that to happen? Is that like a couple of weeks? Is it a day, depending on vacation schedules?
I would like to answer part of that. I would like to answer part of that. So first off, I don't anticipate this kind of thing being very common. Where there's not any kind of lead up that would enable us to conclude the fixes, prepare and conclude the fixes. But if there is a dire situation and DHCD as the back of the house needs to do something, we would want to have something from, I don't know, probably if it's the county administrator who went off and won the lottery and disappeared, then we would probably want something from the chair of the Board of Supervisors officially requesting our assistance with X, Y, and Z. And so once we had that in hand, then we could work with Lauren and her team. And I'm going to guess that in some kind of dire circumstances, we could impose on them and beg and plead a little to expedite it.
Yes, absolutely.
But I do think that having that official formal notification would be an essential first step.
I would also like to continue that conversation with you, Amanda, just to lay out kind of how that is operating currently and how it it may differ from program to program or division to division. So I want to understand what you need for your folks in your division for that.
Absolutely, and thank you. And like I said, I don't think that the scenario we're discussing is one that is going to come up frequently. It will come up, but it shouldn't be frequent. Thanks.
Did I see a hand raised and then put down, or did I miss that? Maybe I made that up. Do we feel good about roles?
I'd like to be in on that discussion with Amanda that you have, Lauren, if you don't mind.
Yes, ma'am.
Just because I have a few more years CAMS experience than her, and I think we need to examine it very, very closely. And so you're saying that you're going to remove the full access for the consultant to partial?
For the for this project information, this first tab here, yeah, I think that makes sense to keep that in line with the rest of the access. And that would be if a consultant had a primary role, if it was a consultant primary role, that would be for any project within the organization's project list. They would then only have partial access to this initial tab. They would not be able to make any changes. I do need to talk to CAMS Core about that, but I don't know that there would be any instance when it wouldn't make sense to just have partial access the whole way down here.
Great, thank you.
All right.
And I'm sorry.
Oh, yes.
For partial access, what they can't submit anything did I hear that one correctly? Or like the monthly reports?
Correct.
Partial access is you can save, but you cannot submit. I think I've got that. I have that down here. So I have that listed on this.
Is it possible to like, I don't know what CAMS looks like from the grantees in
this here.
But I didn't, when you like upload the document and then you can't press save. So does it automatically save?
You can press save. The submit button will be grayed out.
Okay.
So Jessica, when you go into our dashboard, on the upper right hand, it will show you sources like go back to dashboard, go back to project. There'll be a place where you can hit where it will allow you to see the portal view. And so you can click on that and it will show you what your grantees are seeing.
And I can send you that also, Jessica. But so then past the table, I do have it written out in text, those permissions. Sometimes it's just kind of easier to see it. You can, if you've got this primary role of project manager and you don't have a project role, then you can see what you have access to for all projects. And that is explained here in the text up top. But then just down below, I've got a little bit more information about who can do what. So that full access down here is you can do everything, you can edit, you can save, you can submit. That partial access is only saving. You cannot submit if it says partial access up here. So that only pertains to the consultant role. If we don't have any more questions on roles, I want to jump into some project specific functions. We looked through over here, we looked at changing our user information. I guess I didn't touch on this fully. If you need to change any of the organization information, so address or website, you can make those changes here. You can also change your organization type, but you need to do that carefully. This will impact what programs you're able to apply for. And if you haven't chosen accurately here, you will be applying for, submitting that application and then not truly be qualified for it. But if for some reason you find that you're trying to apply for something and it's not showing up, it could be because the eligible organization types that are chosen for that application are not the ones that you have checked here. So the organization head and profile manager are the only roles that have access to change the information on this page. We spent a lot of time here on the staff page. So this is where we're going to add, remove, or edit roles. This CAMS primary role is all the access that we just discussed. And that little info button beside it will take you to just that chunk of the user guide if you need a refresher. So we've got the table, we've got the text explanation for each role, and then we've got some examples about how it could restrict access or provide additional access. We've got those listed out here. We checked out the project roles, and that's really applicable for users with primary roles of project administrator, organization review, or consultant if you want to give just specific project access. We checked out audits for compliance, and we did a practice upload of an audit. So that's going to be organization head, profile manager, and financial analyst. Primary roles can come and upload audits here to make sure we stay in compliance. And we looked at the managed documents. Again, it doesn't get used often. You want to make sure you don't put your audit here. W-9 is really what I see uploaded here most often. So we will next check out budget revisions, remittance requests, and reports for a particular project. I was hoping we'd have like a question section at the end, but it feels like it's working to ask them as we're going. So I'm going to run through these. If questions feel appropriate at the time, go ahead and ask them. But if you know that you've got a question that is outside of what we're reviewing and I need to save time at the end, put that in the chat with an asterisk so that I can start calculating how much time to leave for us to discuss this. So we'll first look at making a budget revision. So I'm going to go to my budget revision section here. The user guide. So I think this is like 35, 37. I send this page to people a lot. So we're going to our projects and reports. We're going to go check out this ARS project. So we're clicking detail. We're going to look at our budget tab, and I can't do anything. I can't make my budget revision. So all my buttons are grayed out here, and I don't have the add or delete links at the top that would allow me to make changes. That's because the status here is pending. So someone at DHCD it's in the middle of a review workflow. If a budget revision is being reviewed, you cannot enter another one. So that's going to be one reason why you can't enter a budget revision. Another one could be your role. So I can see up here, my role is right after my name. I'm a profile manager, so I do have access to do that. So I can see the next thing to check is the status, and it's pending. So that is the reason why I cannot make a budget revision here. I can, however, make it on the other project that I've got. So we can kind of see how it looks different. So I now have these add and delete options. I also see that the status of this budget is approved. So I want to go in and add a line item here. I can also change the amounts. So let's make this 27. We'll select from these line items. We'll add equipment. I see here that I've got $30,010 in my DHCD request, and it does not match my total request up here, and I will get an error message for that. I also, I've got my error messages over here. I've got another error message that I see it sometimes. If I leave a blank line item and try to save, I'll see here, expand each category to search for line items still requiring value. You don't have to put anything in here. If it's if it's a mistake, you can check the box and delete it. You don't have to add something and then just say, oh, like I saw a budget the other day that was like, this was required, and then $0. You can just check the box and delete it there. Then we can save, and we'll see our next error message is that this total does not match this column here. After I make that change, we should be good to go. We've got this message that comes up here that it's saved, but if I want to submit it, I have to click the Request Budget Revision button. Sometimes, or more often than sometimes, users won't click Save before clicking Request. Request will not be available until you click Save. So it's not that you can't request it. You just have to click Save before you can click the Request Budget Revision button. And I've got that over here. I think that's on the next page. Yes, so 8, click Save, and then you can click Request Budget Revision. All right, so we've submitted our budget.
However, can I ask a question real quick?
Yeah.
If that was the grant manager who made those changes in there, they would have to then like send an email to the profile manager or the org head and tell them to request budget revision, because they couldn't press both save and request.
Yes, if the user had, so you can see here, so if they had a project administrator primary role or consultant primary role, or sorry, not project administrator, that's view only. The only instance here would be for the consultant. They would have to have someone else hit the submit button. Project administrator and org review can't even start a budget revision.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yes.
That's what I wanted to make clear to the audience, that's why, and that's what happens in most of my projects. The PDC or somebody will put it in for them and ask them to review it and click request.
Yes.
Okay.
So we'll next check out our remittance request. So now I'm on my remittances tab here. I'm going to go to enter a new remittance, and I get this error message. So you cannot submit a remittance request if your budget status is pending. So it pulls up this window. I can't enter any information or save it, so you'll just close out of that. But this here has to say approved to be able to enter and submit that budget, or excuse me, that remittance request. You also have to have the appropriate role. There is one other instance when a remittance may not be able to be submitted, and that is on our end. So we've got a checkbox that opens a subprogram for remittances. Says, all right, request money from us and we'll pay it out. If we don't check that box and you try to request a remittance, it also will give you an error message. If you've checked your budget status and it's approved and you have a role that allows you to submit a remittance, that's when you'd say to your program administrator, hey, I can't submit it, and then I'll go and check. And most of the time it's that box needs to be checked. Our finance department will check it, and then the remittances are good to go. So let's go submit. Oh man, do I have both? I put both of my budgets in pending now. I'll be able to do a remittance. That's okay. We'll be able to see the basics of it. Maybe it won't pull it up for me. Man, I didn't. I went out of order, and now I've limited myself. That's okay. We can look at this screen and pretend. So we've got the next step in the next page in our user guide is submitting remittances. So the first section here explains this equation at the top, what each of those portions mean. It also runs through the remittance statuses and what those mean, so we can see our status up at the top here. But then we'll also see the status in that table of our remittances on the remittances tab. And then we've got our instructions for submitting a remittance request. So first is clicking that enter new remittance. We're entering our invoice number. There's no naming convention for that here, but if you do have that for your particular program, make sure that you're keeping that in mind and entering those as instructed in your program guidelines. And then our next step is opening up the cost category that has the line item we want to request money from. So I've already requested money from this one here. So it was $10 of administration. And after I enter that, I can see what I've got available in that category, and changing the amounts in these fields here is dynamic. So the rest of the information on this page will change when you enter the amounts that you're requesting. If you need to attach anything for remittance supporting documentation, if it's not a submitted remittance, there will be a box here that'll allow you to choose a file. You can upload a zip file here if you need to. Also, I know that a lot of the programs here have specific templates for this upload, so make sure that you're using that. You are able to submit a remittance without that. This isn't a required field, and that is one reason that remittances can get denied if you don't have the appropriate documentation attached. And then you save and submit your remittance request. I don't think I have any huge errors or things to point out for submitting a remittance. It's mainly just making sure that you've got the appropriate role. So if you have a consultant role, you'll only have that save button available to you. You won't be able to submit it here.
Lauren, I'd just like to make a request of our grantees to please number the drawdowns, the remittance requests. Most of you are really good at it. Some of you aren't doing it, but it's very helpful if you're trying to have a conversation about a specific remittance request that, everybody's looking at the same one because it's got a number.
Yes.
Thank you.
Are there any questions on budget revisions or remittance requests before I move to submitting reports? And it's all really detailed step by step in the user guide over here also. Trying to balance between giving you a taste of everything and helping out new folks and seasoned folks. And so if there's anything that didn't totally click, I've got it all listed out here. Yes, Ellen.
I know like when a remittance may be denied or when it's submitted, we get an email saying your request has gone to DHCD or whatever. But when it's paid, when it's been approved, we never get any type of notice. I just have to go in the system and check it and see that the status went from pending to paid. Is that something that is
working on that?
Okay.
Yes.
So Ellen, right now, we don't pay. So DOA pays.
Okay.
So part of the issue is the fact that we don't necessarily know when you get paid any sooner than you're going to get paid.
Right.
But that's it. We're not the ones paying you.
Okay. But even just getting a notice saying that funds have gone through, so then I can notify my finance department, hey, keep an eye out for this money coming in. So.
Yes, we're doing an overhaul of the emails that are sent out from CAMS. One of the things is making sure that the project name is listed instead of, I think for the remittances, it just says like the remittance ID and it may not tell you which project.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got a spreadsheet of all of those, what's being sent, what needs to be sent. And I know there were some for remittances that needed to be included. And I think one of them was that, you get a denied notification, but that once it's approved, not paid, but once our team says, yep, approved, I'm not sure that email gets sent out, but I would need to check my spreadsheet. But yes, it is, that is being reviewed. Also, the current emails that are sent from CAMS, we did make a change, Janet. So the organization head, so anybody on the staff list with organization head and profile manager will get the emails, but also the user who is listed as the project primary contact and the person who submitted the request. So if it was a remittance, a budget revision, or a report, they will also get those notifications.
Could we also include in that the consultant? Because usually it's the consultant who needs to know that information along with the financial analyst.
It is whoever submits the request. So if the consultant, I guess if the consultant is not the project primary contact, they would not get that notification. I'll talk to Sharon and see if we could, because it's logged who saves it and then who submits it. I'll see if that's something that we can do. Any other budget revision remittance questions? I'll write that down. All right. It is not working because I sent you the test link. Sorry about that. Let me send you the real link. Let me know if that one's working for you. Then the last thing we're looking at is submitting a report. We submitted the report that we saw in this reporting schedule here. So if it's a scheduled report that has a due date, you'll see it in the reporting schedule on the first page that shows up when you log into CAMS. All of these have been submitted. They will show up in this list until the administrator approves them, then they will be erased from that list. If they're in red, they're overdue. If it is not started or incomplete, but not overdue, they will show up in this list, but they won't be read. So you'll have to check and look at this status. If you've got some that have been submitted but haven't been approved yet, they'll appear the same as reports that need to be completed, but it'll be that status button there or a status column there that'll let you know that those are ones that you need to complete.
So Lauren, does that message appear regardless of which program the report is overdue? So if my grantee has an IRF project and they're overdue for a report, does that then also pop up on all their other stuff, or is it just pops up on IRF?
It will only show up on the report that it is overdue for. So here on this page from the reporting schedule, it will show up in red, like at the beginning when I was showing that overdue report. And then we would see it only once we clicked into the project that had the overdue report, that red flag at the top of in the header for that project only. And the compliance in CAMS also, or at CAMS admin, will only apply to that project. The audit will apply to all projects if it's an overdue audit or a financial statement. So we can see any of those scheduled reports that have a due date. We can see them here in the reporting schedule. We can click on them to complete them from that page. We can also access them from the project itself. So clicking detail and going to this last tab, reports and documents, they'll show up on this tab also with the due date and the link to click and complete it. If it is not a report that has a due date and has been scheduled by your program administrator and you need to upload a document, you choose that from this drop down here. And so we've got a few different options. The one that gets used really often is a contract document. We've got correspondence, media, compliance. So if we're looking here for contract document, we can enter, attach our file and our description, and then submit that for our administrator to review.
If we can also label it up in that area where it said edit, because then we'll have, a yes.
Oops. Here, we'll do that again. All right, we'll get our contract document. And I think I have that over here also. Yes, so number 6, click edit to change the name if that's something that's part of your guidelines. So we've got this edit, and we can change it to whatever we would like.
Yeah, budget revision request, monthly report, whatever the document actually is, or else it'll only show up as a contract document.
All right, so we've got that submitted. And I know from this drop down, we've got some IPR templates listed. In the future, there could be other reports that are listed here. So if that is applicable to your project, or if you're starting off with IPR and you're looking for your completion reports or your setup reports, I think ARS might have some in this drop down, or maybe they don't have them there anymore, Sherry. I'm not totally sure. But this is a tool that I'll start making use of, especially for reports that apply to properties. And so it's not something that gets scheduled every month. You don't know when you're going to have a new property or project or document to submit for that. Those templates will be here in this drop down for that particular project. They will not show up on this reporting schedule because they're not assigned with a due date. They're there for you to pull down provisionally as you need them. And now we have 7 minutes for questions. Any additional questions? Shocked by the silence.
I think that there were several requests for another CAMS training, probably a really 101 or whatever, for just brand new people that have never requested a remittance or anything like that. So that might be something that's coming down the pike, Lauren, and we would appreciate you being available to help us with that, please.
I can help set it up. This is a special thing that I do because I have heartstrings for PAAO. I do training for our staff internally primarily, and that's something that now that I'm moving away from RRP will be coming back around and happening. I've got the CAMS user guide that I really invested a lot of time in for our grantees to look through and turn to when they need help. And then I try to answer questions through the help desk and provide our staff with as much information as they need to offer trainings for their grantees on this, because there are programmatic nuances and because I cannot do this for everyone who uses CAMS. This is a secret just for Grant Management Workshop.
So Lauren, we have a virtual calendar set up for trainings through October of next year. We're going to put together a 101 training in April. And I will touch base with you offline to get some tips and tricks and techniques and everything else to help get that set up.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you. We really appreciate you, and the guide is wonderful. But it's you need to be in there to actually even understand the guide. It doesn't start you from ground zero, and so that's what Sherry is speaking of. It's less than 101. It's probably 001. It's like, don't be afraid. Here we go. But the user guide is excellent. Thank you so much, Lauren.
Of course. Here's the CAMS help desk email. Kike Oliver manages that, and I step in if we've got anything that's outside of the ordinary for questions. But anytime you've got issues and you're not able to work it out with your program administrator, that's the next line of defense there. So staff can forward to that, and CAMS portal users also.
Yes, so this is pre-Lauren and pre-COVID, but we actually used to hold CAMS labs for beginners, and we had Todd running around with a bunch of loaner laptops, and we would set them out. And I know Matt and myself, and I think Joanne was in there, and Doug Ellis was in there, and we were like substitute teachers running around going, click that, and then go to the next person. Okay, click that. We got everybody in and signed up. So it was quite a feat, but we'll have to figure out how to do this virtually, since we can't do loaner laptops and we can't do in person right now. So we'll get it figured out before April, I promise.
Thanks, Sherry.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thanks, Lauren.
Thanks, y'all.
So
you, Lauren.
as we conclude today's 2 training events, I do want to ask the PAAO team to hold back. I want to touch base briefly about tomorrow. And thanks to so many people for joining us earlier and for this session. I found this really informative. Clearly, we are all somewhere on the learning curve, and this has just been great. Any observations or thoughts or final questions before we turn it to Sherry to kind of give us a heads up about any specifics for tomorrow? Sherry.
Okay, thank you all again. Thank you, Lauren, so much for coming to our rescue and spending an hour and a half with us. This was great. And like I said, I'll be in touch for a CAMS 001 training in April. And everyone else, please enjoy your afternoon. We will get started again tomorrow morning at 9. Tomorrow's our 3rd and final day of the grant management workshop, and we look forward to seeing you all. We've got a full day, so see you then. The workshop opens. We'll actually open at 8:45, so you can sign on anytime after 8:45 in the morning. Have a good one, everyone.
Hi, it's great to see everyone.
Okay.
Well, is it snowing near anybody else? Oh,
It's snowing in Enrico. Hey, Sherry, are you disconnecting a few people?
Is any of our staff on a 434 just hung up? Okay, so we're good to go.
Amanda, you're on mute.
Right.
It looks like it's getting to be less than optimal driving conditions out my window right now, and I don't expect it to be better tomorrow morning. So EB and I had talked earlier about her using this space and my computer to do her session, but I'm not so sure that either of us is going to be here tomorrow morning. So
And
what
Amanda,
is an alternative?
I haven't really had that much problem since I came back home.
Okay,
So
well, that's great for now. but
maybe
what
it
about-
just had something to do with being in Jason's old cubicle, or I don't know, the weather. But I didn't have any problems listening and hearing people during Lauren's presentation. So I'm feeling pretty good about tomorrow.
Well, let's make a plan B just in case. What's your assignment for tomorrow?
I'm a speaker buddy for Tanya. That's the financial.
Okay.
So that's it's at a 10:40.
Kirsten, can you do that instead? So maybe Elizabeth and Kirsten can have some conversations that we don't all have to be part of, that kind of prep Kirsten for that.
Yeah.
And if your connection is great, Elizabeth, then roll with it. And
Right.
if not, we're still in good shape.
Great. Thanks, Kirsten.
Absolutely.
All righty, Rue.
And Amanda, I will send you the link for tomorrow, so that you have it, so that you can forward it on to our new director as well.
Okay, I appreciate that. Full day, great information, awesome presentations. So we're like 2 out of 3, and tomorrow will be equally good or better. So I'm super excited about what we'll hear then, and thanks to the hard work that everybody's put in to bring us this far.
And Sherry, I hope you share with Lauren all the compliments she got. I'm not sure she saw them, but it was clear that everybody really appreciated